The night was quiet on the space station. The long glass window showed nothing but endless stars. A lonely human engineer sat at his desk, repairing a broken communication device. His name was Daniel.
He had been working alone for many months.
No family, no friends, only machines to keep him company. Sometimes he spoke to himself just to hear a voice. His heart carried a deep silence, the silence of a man forgotten by the world. On this night, something unusual happened. The warning lights did not flash, the alarm did not ring. Yet Daniel felt a strange presence behind him. He turned, and there stood a little alien girl. She was small, no taller than his chest. Her skin glowed faintly like silver moonlight. Her eyes were wide, shining with tears. Her clothes were torn, her shoes looked old. But what caught Daniel most was the sadness on her face. For a long moment, neither spoke. The girl seemed afraid. Daniel slowly put his tools down. He spoke gently. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The girl's lips trembled, and then she whispered words that made his heart freeze. "My mom is so lonely," she said, her voice breaking. "Can you please be my dad at her birthday party?" Daniel blinked in shock. He thought he had misheard. He leaned closer, but her eyes were serious. Full of pain and hope, he tried to understand. Why would a stranger, an alien child, come to him with such a strange request? The girl's tears rolled down her cheeks. "She waits every year," the child explained softly. "She waits for someone to come. But no one comes." Her voice was shaking now. "Other children laugh at me. They say I don't have a father. They say my mom is cursed." She held her small hands together, almost begging, "Please, just for one night, just pretend to be my dad." Daniel's heart ached. He saw the loneliness in her face. It was the same loneliness he felt inside his own chest. The kind of emptiness that eats slowly, day after day. He wanted to say no. He wanted to ask more questions, but her eyes were too heavy. Too desperate. She was not lying. This was the pure pain of a child asking for help. He crouched down to her level. "What is your name?" he asked quietly. The girl sniffled. "Leora." "Leora," he repeated softly. "And your mother?" "What is her name?" The child hesitated, then whispered. "Soraya." The name sounded strange, alien, but there was beauty in them. Daniel sighed deeply. He was a human engineer. Not a father, not a hero. But something inside him told him this was not a simple invitation. This was fate knocking on his door. He looked into Leora's eyes. "Why me?" he asked, almost to himself. The little girl answered, "Because you are human." Her words sent a chill through his spine. Why would being human matter to them? Why had she crossed the empty space just to find him? The station air felt heavy. The lights above flickered as if the universe itself was listening. Daniel knew if he agreed, his life might change forever. If he refused, he would never forgive himself. The girl's small hand reached toward him, trembling but full of hope. "Will you come?" she whispered again. Her voice was soft, but the weight in it was heavier than all the stars outside. Daniel stared at her hand for a long moment. He felt the silence of his own empty life pressing on him. Then slowly, very slowly, he reached out his hand, and the moment his fingers touched hers, the air around them seemed to shift. The story of his lonely life had just taken a turn, and he did not yet know the danger, the mystery, and the love waiting for him on the other side. Daniel followed the little alien girl down the long corridor of the station. Her small silver figure walked ahead of him, her glowing skin leaving faint trails of light. He felt like he was walking in a dream that was not his own. The station doors slid open as she moved, almost as if the machines obeyed her presence. The girl turned her head once, her big eyes shining like wet glass. She did not smile, she did not speak. Her sadness was louder than words. Daniel realized then that she was carrying a weight too heavy for such small shoulders. He wanted to ask again, why him, why a human? But he stayed silent. He remembered her trembling voice. "My mom is so lonely." Those words still rang inside his heart. It was as if the child's sorrow had tied itself around his soul. When they reached the small docking bay, she stopped. She turned to him slowly, her eyes full of both hope and fear. "Do you really mean it?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Will you come with me? Will you stand with my mom?" Daniel knelt down, trying to meet her gaze. Her eyes were wide and wet like a storm waiting to break. "I don't know what your world will ask of me," he admitted, "but I will not let you face this alone." Her lips trembled. And for the first time, a small smile appeared. It was weak like a fragile flame, but it was there. The girl reached out and touched his hand. Her touch was cold. Yet it carried warmth of trust in that moment. Daniel understood. She was not just sad. She was desperate. This was her last hope. The ship waiting for them was unlike anything he had seen. It was not metal like human ships. It looked alive, its surface breathing with faint pulses of light. Daniel hesitated, but the girl pulled his hand gently. Urging him forward, he stepped inside, and the walls closed around them like a heartbeat. Inside, the air smelled of strange flowers. The seats grew out of the floor like living roots. The girl sat quietly, folding her hands on her lap. Daniel watched her, wondering what kind of life she had lived. A child so young, yet carrying the sadness of an old soul. "Leora," he said softly, trying her name again. The girl looked up at him. "Why are you so sad?" he asked gently. Her eyes filled again with tears, but she did not look away. "Because my mom pretends to be strong," she whispered. "But at night, I hear her cry." Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen loneliness before, his own sharp and empty. But this was worse. This was a child forced to live in the shadow of her mother's broken heart. "Why do the others laugh at you?" Daniel asked carefully. The girl lowered her head, her silver hair falling across her face. "Because we are different," she said. "Because we do not follow their ways. They say we are cursed, they say we are weak. And because I have no father, the children say I should not exist." Daniel's fists tightened. Anger rose inside him, anger not for himself, but for her. How could a whole world mock a child just because she was born without a father? How could they call love and loneliness a curse? The girl's shoulders shook. She tried to hide her tears, but they kept falling. Daniel gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "You are not cursed," he said firmly. "You are more human than many humans I know." Her eyes lifted to his, and in them was a spark of light. It was small but real for the first time. Her sadness seemed to soften. Perhaps she believed him. Perhaps she wanted to believe. The living ship began to move, floating silently into the dark void. Daniel watched the stars slide past, but he did not feel the same emptiness as before. For the first time in years, he felt needed. He felt like his life, his human heart, had a purpose again, and deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The girl with sad eyes had led him into a story that would change both their worlds forever. The living ship glided through the stars like a silent shadow. Daniel sat beside Leora, feeling the floor pulse under his boots like a giant heart. It was not like human ships with cold metal and noisy engines. This vessel felt alive, as if it breathed with them. He looked at the girl, still quiet, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She stared at the window, watching the stars pass by. Her sad eyes carried a secret, a story untold. Daniel wanted to ask, but something in her silence told him the answers would come soon. The ship slowed, and ahead appeared a massive asteroid. It was dark on the outside, but strange lights flickered within its cracks as they drew closer. Daniel saw something impossible. The asteroid opened, like a flower blooming, revealing a hidden world inside. The ship slipped through the opening, and suddenly Daniel was surrounded by color and sound. The inside of the asteroid was not dead rock. It was a city, an entire alien colony built in secret. Glowing towers rose like crystal trees. Bridges hung like spider silk across wide glowing lakes. Strange flying creatures moved between tall spires, leaving trails of light. The air shimmered with music like hums. As if the city itself was alive, Daniel's eyes widened. He had seen many places in his life, but never this. It was beautiful, yet it carried a strange weight. Something in the air felt heavy, like a silence beneath a song. The ship landed softly on a platform that grew out of the ground. Leora stood quickly and tugged Daniel's hand. "Come," she whispered. "We must hurry." They walked through the glowing streets. Aliens of many shapes passed by, tall ones with golden skin, short ones with glassy shells. But every time eyes fell on Daniel and Leora, whispers followed. Faces turned away, some frowned, some sneered. Daniel felt the sharp sting of judgment without words. He noticed how Leora lowered her head. Used to the stares, it made his heart burn with anger. "Why are they looking at us like that?" he asked in a low voice. Leora's voice was almost a whisper. "Because you are human, and because of me." Her eyes shimmered again, the sadness never leaving. They reached a tall crystal hall. The doors opened with a soft sigh, and inside was brighter, filled with soft glowing lamps. At the far end of the hall stood a woman. She was tall, her skin the same silver glow as Leora's. Her eyes were deep and filled with a quiet sorrow. Her beauty was striking, but her posture told a different story. She carried herself with grace, but also with a weight of loneliness. Leora ran to her, throwing her small arms around her waist. "Mom!" she cried, her voice breaking with joy and fear. The woman bent down, holding her daughter tight. Her eyes lifted slowly toward Daniel. She looked at him for a long moment, silent. Her face was calm, but her eyes trembled. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but sharp. "Who are you?" Daniel stood frozen. He wanted to answer, but how? He was no father, no hero, just a lonely engineer pulled into a stranger's world. Before he could speak, Leora held her mother's hand. "He came," she said quickly.
"He came because I asked. He will stand with us."
"At your birthday?" The woman's lips parted slightly in shock. Her eyes moved between Daniel and her daughter. Her hands shook as if she did not believe it. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "No one has ever stood with us before." The hall grew quiet. Daniel felt the eyes of others watching from the corners, hidden but present. He realized then that this was more than just a birthday. This was a test, a risk, a challenge he did not yet understand, and deep in his heart, he knew. The journey had only just begun. The crystal hall was silent. Daniel stood near the entrance, uncertain. Leora clung to her mother's hand, her small silver fingers trembling. The woman's glowing eyes never left Daniel. She studied him with caution, like someone afraid of another wound. Her name was Soraya. She carried herself with grace, but her shoulders seemed heavy. Her face was beautiful, yet her eyes held deep cracks of sorrow. Daniel had seen lonely people before, but never like this. Her loneliness was not hidden, it walked with her. It breathed through her silence. "Why are you here?" Soraya finally asked. Her voice was soft, but there was steel inside it. Daniel opened his mouth, searching for words. Before he could speak, Leora rushed forward. "He came because I asked," the little girl said. Her voice broke the silence like glass. "He said he will not let us be alone." Soraya's lips trembled. For a moment she turned away, hiding her face from them both. Her hand rested against her chest as if holding back pain. "No one stands with us, Leora," she whispered. "You know this, but he came," the child insisted, pulling her mother's hand. "Please, just for one night. Let him stand with us. Let us have a family. Even if only in the eyes of others." Daniel's chest tightened. He had walked into strange worlds before, but this one was different. This was not about machines or laws. This was about broken hearts, about dignity, about belonging. He took a step forward. "I don't know your customs," he said gently. "I don't know what you expect of me, but I know what it means to be alone. And I will not let your daughter carry that weight alone." Soraya turned to him slowly. Her eyes softened for the first time, but they were still guarded. "You are human," she said, almost like a warning. "Do you know what that means here?" Daniel shook his head, her lips pressed tightly. "It means you are a symbol," she whispered. "Some see humans as weak. Some see humans as dangerous. Either way, you will not be welcome." Daniel's heart pounded. He was only one man. Yet standing there, he felt the weight of an entire world pressing against him. Still, when he looked at Leora, he knew he could not step back. Her sad eyes were now filled with fragile hope, and he could not break it. "I don't care if I'm welcome," Daniel said firmly. "If being with her and with you means standing against them, then so be it." The hall grew colder. From the shadows, quiet whispers stirred. Unseen watchers were listening, unseen judges hiding behind the crystal walls. Soraya looked around, her hands tightening. She knew they were being watched. Every word, every choice, would spread through the colony before the night ended. She closed her eyes, drawing a long breath. When she opened them again, Daniel saw both fear and courage. "Then you must understand," she said slowly. "Tomorrow is my birthday. It is not a celebration. It is a reminder every year they come not to honor me, but to mock me." Her voice shook. "They call me cursed. They call my daughter a mistake. They laugh because I have no husband, no protector, and tomorrow they will laugh again." Leora gripped her mother's arm tightly. "But not this time," the girl whispered. "This time, he will stand with us." Soraya's eyes filled with tears. Though she tried to hide them, her pride was strong, but her heart was fragile. She looked at Daniel for a long moment, and in her silence, A question burned. Could she really trust him? Daniel felt the weight of that unspoken question, and though he had no answers, he gave the only truth he had. "I cannot take away your past," he said softly. "But tomorrow, I will stand as if I belong to you both." For the first time, Soraya's lips curved into the faintest smile. It was not full of joy but of relief, a smile that belonged to someone who had carried pain too long, and now maybe, just maybe, she would not carry it alone. But deep in the shadows of the crystal hall, the whispers grew. The colony would not ignore this. The night of the birthday was coming, and with it, danger greater than Daniel yet understood. The next evening came too fast. The alien city inside the asteroid glowed brighter than usual. Colorful lights floated across the sky like gentle spirits. It looked like a night for celebration. But to Soraya it felt like walking into a storm. She stood in front of a mirror made of crystal water. Her reflection shimmered and changed with every breath. Leora helped her mother fix her long silver hair. The little girl's hands shook with both excitement and fear. "Mom," she whispered. "He will come, right?" Soraya's eyes softened. "He said he would," she replied quietly. But deep down she was afraid. Afraid that maybe he wouldn't show up, afraid that if he did, the crowd would tear him apart with words and stares. When Daniel arrived, the hall guards froze. A human had never been invited to their gatherings. Their glowing eyes scanned him with disgust and curiosity. But Daniel kept walking, calm and steady. He wore a simple black suit, repaired and cleaned from his station days. It didn't match their bright alien fashion, but somehow, it made him stand out like a shadow among stars. When he entered the grand hall, silence fell. Hundreds of alien guests turned their heads. Whispers spread like cold wind. "Is that a human?" One voice hissed, "Why is he here?" Another sneered. Someone laughed softly. Maybe Soraya finally paid someone to pretend. The laughter was quiet but sharp. Soraya's hands clenched, her heart aching. She felt the old shame rising again. Leora looked up at Daniel with worried eyes. He gave her a gentle nod as if saying, "Don't be afraid." He walked to Soraya's side and bowed slightly. "Happy birthday," he said softly. The words were simple, but they felt heavy. Soraya's lips trembled. For a moment, the hall disappeared for her. There was only this human, standing beside her without fear. The guests began to circle closer. Some pretended to smile. Others whispered openly. One tall alien woman stepped forward, her eyes cold as glass. "So," she said, "this is your husband? A human?" Her voice dripped with poison. Laughter followed, cruel and sharp. Daniel looked at her calmly. "No," he said. "I am not her husband." Gasps spread around the room. Soraya's breath caught in her throat. But Daniel continued, "I am her guest, her friend, and her daughter's protector." The woman smirked. "Protector? You?" Her words made the others laugh louder. "You humans are weak. You cannot even protect your own dying worlds." Daniel took a slow breath. His jaw tight, he could feel every eye on him, waiting for him to break. But instead of anger, his voice came low and steady. "Maybe we are weak," he said. "Maybe we lose more battles than we win, but we stand for what matters. And we never laugh at someone who suffers." The room fell silent. Even the floating lights seemed to pause. Daniel's words cut through the air like a blade of truth. Some of the guests looked away in shame, others glared with hate, but no one spoke. Soraya's heart pounded. No one had ever defended her like that. Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. For the first time, she didn't feel small. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. Leora ran forward and took Daniel's hand, her voice bright and clear. "He is my dad tonight," she said proudly. The crowd gasped. Even Soraya's lips parted in shock. But Daniel only smiled down at her. "Then I better act like one," he said softly. And just like that, the laughter faded, the whispers died. The hall filled with uneasy silence. A human had stood up against their pride. And that was something none of them expected. But deep among the crowd, hidden eyes watched. A figure in dark robes whispered to another. "The human must be dealt with." The words were quiet. But full of threat, the night was not over, and the price of Daniel's courage was yet to come. The air in the hall grew heavy. The laughter had died, but the tension stayed. Daniel stood beside Soraya and Leora, feeling every eye burn into his back. He could sense their anger, their disbelief, their pride shaking. To them, a human standing tall among their kind was an insult. One of the elders stepped forward. He was tall, with skin that shimmered like gold and eyes sharp as fire. His voice echoed through the hall. "Human," he said coldly. "You speak brave words for one so small." The crowd murmured in agreement. "You do not belong here. You are an outsider. This is not your world." Daniel looked around the room. So many faces, some curious, some disgusted, and among them, Leora's small face stared at him with pure trust. That was enough. He would not stay silent. "Maybe you're right," Daniel said slowly. "I don't belong here. I'm not one of you. But maybe that's why I see what you don't." The elder frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" Daniel took a deep breath. He raised his voice so all could hear. "I see a mother who works every day to raise her child. A child who smiles even when the world laughs at her, and I see people, powerful, proud people who think kindness is weakness." The words hung in the air like thunder. No one moved, no one spoke. Soraya's heart pounded so fast she could hear it echo. Daniel stepped closer to the elder, his voice calm but strong. "Where I come from, we don't measure someone's worth by blood or species. We measure it by their heart." The elder's eyes burned with anger. "You dare lecture us, human?" he hissed. "You come into our sacred hall and tell us how to live?" Daniel didn't step back. He stood straight, his voice quiet but steady. "I didn't come to lecture. I came because a little girl asked me to. Because her mother is mocked for loving too much. And because silence is the same as cruelty." Gasps spread across the room. Even the music crystals along the walls dimmed. Leora gripped her mother's arm tightly, whispering, "He's not afraid." "Mom?" Soraya's eyes filled with tears again. But this time not from pain, from pride. No one had ever spoken for her before. Not since the day she was banished from her former home. Not since the day she was left to raise her daughter alone. The elder stepped back, his golden light flickering with rage. "You humans always pretend to care, but your kind destroys everything it touches." Daniel shook his head. "Maybe," he said softly, "but we also build, we love, we forgive, and when someone is hurt, we don't turn our backs for a moment." Silence filled the entire hall. The crowd stood frozen, unsure whether to cheer or to curse. Some of the younger aliens looked at each other with confusion. For the first time, they were hearing something different, something they had never been told before. The elder slammed his hand against the floor. "Enough," he roared. "This human will not stain our gathering with his words." But before he could continue, a soft voice cut through the noise. It was Soraya. Her voice trembled but carried strength Daniel had never heard before. "His words are not a stain," she said. "They are truth." The elder turned, shocked. Soraya stepped forward, her silver hair glowing under the crystal lights. "For years you laughed at me. For years you called me cursed, but tonight, a stranger from another world stood for me, and for once, I do not feel ashamed." The hall fell completely silent. Even the floating lights stopped moving. Leora smiled through her tears, clutching her mother's dress. Daniel watched Soraya with quiet awe. He didn't need to speak anymore. Her courage was louder than anything he could say. But deep in the corner of the hall, a dark figure whispered to another, "This human has changed the crowd. We must act before dawn." And as the lights brightened again, Daniel didn't know that his bold words had just started a fire that could either save or destroy them all. After the gathering ended, the great crystal hall fell silent. The guests left one by one, their whispers still floating in the air like ghosts. Some spoke in anger, some in confusion, but a few, just a few, walked away with quiet respect. Something had changed that night, even if the colony refused to admit it. Daniel stayed close to Soraya and Leora. He could feel eyes watching them from the shadows. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the city itself disapproved. But Soraya's steps were firm now, her chin high for the first time in years. She did not walk like a woman of shame. She walked like someone who had finally remembered her worth. When they reached their home, a small crystal dwelling near the edge of the colony, Soraya turned to Daniel, her voice soft but tired. "You shouldn't have spoken like that," she said. "They won't forgive it." Daniel frowned. "For telling the truth?" She looked away. "In this world, truth is dangerous." Leora climbed onto the glowing couch and hugged her knees. Her small voice broke the silence. "Mom, is he in trouble because of us?" Soraya smiled weakly, brushing her daughter's hair. "Yes," she whispered. "But sometimes, The right trouble is worth it. Daniel sat across from them. He could see the cracks in the walls of their home. Not physical ones, but emotional, deep scars left by years of loneliness. He finally asked what had been burning inside him since the day he met them. Why do they hate you so much? Soraya's hands froze. For a moment she said nothing. Then with a long, trembling breath she began. It started many years ago, she said quietly. When I served under Lord Vale, the leader of our colony. Daniel leaned forward. Soraya's voice turned heavy. I was one of his advisors. He was powerful, proud, and cruel. He believed emotions made us weak. But I disagreed. I told him love gives strength, not weakness. Her eyes darkened. One day, he asked me to bind with him, to be his chosen. But I refused. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. You refused? Your leader? Soraya nodded slowly. Yes, and that refusal cost me everything. She looked toward Leora, her voice softer now. He punished me by exile. He spread lies that I was cursed, that my heart was impure, and when Leora was born, they said she was a mark of shame. They never let us forget it. Daniel clenched his fists, anger burning inside. So he punished you for saying no, he said. Soraya nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. I wanted my daughter to grow in peace, but his shadow never left us. Leora looked between them, confused and sad. Is that why they laugh at us? She asked. Soraya nodded again. Yes, little one. They laugh because we chose love over fear. Daniel stood up, pacing slowly. He finally understood. This was not just about loneliness or shame. This was about defiance, about standing against a cruel system. And now he, a human stranger, had walked straight into the center of that storm. What happens now? He asked quietly. Soraya's voice dropped to a whisper. Now he will come. Lord Vale never forgets a challenge, and your words in the hall were a challenge. A sudden gust of wind shook the crystal walls. The lights flickered. Outside, the sound of distant thunder echoed. Though there were no clouds, the living city itself seemed to tremble. Soraya looked up sharply, her face pale. He knows already, she whispered. He's coming. Daniel turned toward the door. He didn't know what kind of creature this lord was, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to run. He would face whatever came, for the sake of the woman and the child who had given his lonely life meaning. And in that moment, as the lights of the colony dimmed one by one, a human heart prepared to fight a storm that even the stars feared. The night inside the glowing colony grew darker than usual. Even the crystal lights along the streets flickered as if afraid. Soraya stood near the window, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon. Leora slept softly beside her, unaware of the storm that was about to come. Daniel watched from the doorway. He could feel the air changing, heavy, tense, almost electric. Something powerful was drawing near, a shadow moving across the light. Soraya, he said quietly, is it him? She nodded without turning. Yes. Lord Vale, she whispered. Her voice trembled, not from fear for herself, but for her daughter. He never forgives defiance. And now that you stood beside me in front of everyone, he will come to make an example of you. Daniel frowned. I'm not afraid of him, he said firmly. Soraya turned to him, her expression soft but sad. You should be, she said. Vale is not like us. He commands the will of the crystals. He can bend light, even thoughts. Before Daniel could speak again, the wall shook. A deep humming vibration filled the room. The air glowed red, and outside, the sky cracked open from the heart of the colony. A massive figure appeared, tall, cloaked in armor that shimmered like liquid fire. His eyes burned gold, and his voice rolled like thunder. Soraya, he said, his tone cold and echoing. So this is where you hide your shame. Soraya stepped in front of Leora, shielding her with her body. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. You've already taken my home, my name, my peace. You won't take my daughter. Vale's eyes shifted toward Daniel. And this? He sneered. This weak creature stands beside you? A human? Daniel stood tall, his heart pounding but his gaze fixed. Yes, he said simply. I stand beside her. The Lord laughed, a sound that shook the walls. You think your words mean anything here, human? You are dust among stars, your kind crawls on dying worlds, and you dare to challenge me. Daniel didn't flinch. Maybe, he said calmly. But at least my kind knows compassion, something you've forgotten long ago. For a moment, silence fell. Then Vale's laughter turned into a growl. The crystals around him cracked, glowing brighter. "I could crush you with a thought," he hissed. "Then do it," Daniel said. "Show her what kind of leader you truly are," Vale froze. The words hit deeper than he expected. The crowd gathering outside began to whisper. Even among his own kind, doubt flickered like a spark. Soraya's eyes widened. She had never seen anyone speak to Vale like that. Her voice trembled. "Daniel, please." But he raised a hand gently. "No, Soraya, he's not a god. He's just a man who's afraid of losing control." Vale's eyes burned brighter. He raised his hand and a wave of red light shot toward Daniel. Soraya screamed, but before the blast could strike, the crystals along the walls flared blue. Leora's small voice cried out, "Stop!" A wave of soft blue light burst from the child. It struck Vale's power and shattered it into fragments. The air exploded with sound and color. When the light cleared, Vale staggered back, his armor cracked. He looked at the child in disbelief. "What are you?" he growled. Leora trembled, hiding behind her mother. Daniel stepped forward, his voice low. "She's what you could never be," he said. "She's love born from courage." Vale's golden eyes flickered with rage and fear. He turned sharply and disappeared into the red mist. His voice echoed as he vanished. "This isn't over, human. I will return." The ground stopped shaking. The air grew calm again. Soraya held Leora tightly. Tears running down her face, Daniel stood beside them, breathing heavily but alive. The night was silent once more. But they all knew the fight was only beginning. The red mist slowly faded. Leaving silence behind, Soraya held Leora close. Feeling her heart race, the echoes of Lord Vale's voice still haunted the air. Outside, the colony glowed faintly, as if the world itself feared to move. Daniel stood near the broken doorway. Breathing hard, his hands were trembling, but his eyes were steady. He had faced many dangers in his life, machine failures, vacuum leaks, loneliness, but nothing compared to this. Facing an alien lord with only his courage and a fragile heart, Soraya looked at him with awe. "You stood against him," she whispered. "No one ever dared to speak to Vale like that." Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "Someone had to," he said softly. "Fear only grows when no one challenges it." Leora peeked from behind her mother, her eyes wide. "Did we win?" she asked innocently. Daniel knelt down beside her. "For now," he said. "But he will come again, and when he does, we must be ready." Soraya frowned. "Ready?" "We have nothing, no allies, no protection." Daniel stood up, looking out toward the glowing city. "Then we find some," he said. "Someone out there must still believe in what's right." Soraya wanted to believe him, but she had lived in this colony too long. Hope was dangerous here. Yet when she looked at him, the human who spoke truth without fear, something inside her began to shift. Maybe this time courage would win. The next day, the city buzzed with rumors. The story of the human who faced the Lord spread through every hall. Some called Daniel a fool. Others whispered that maybe he was sent by fate. For the first time in years, the people spoke of Soraya's name without laughter. In the center of the colony, a group of young aliens gathered secretly. They had seen the confrontation. They had seen a human stand for what their own people were too afraid to defend. One of them said quietly, "If a human can speak truth to power, why can't we?" And so a spark began to grow. Back in Soraya's home, Daniel worked to repair broken devices. He modified their communication unit, connecting it to the outer systems. "If Vale controls the city," he said, "then we send our message beyond it. Someone has to know what's happening here." Soraya watched him, confused but fascinated. "You're not like the others," she said softly. "You don't give up." Daniel looked at her. "I gave up once," he admitted. "On Earth I lost everything, my family, my purpose, my hope. But when Leora knocked on my door, I realized life was giving me another chance." Soraya's eyes filled with tears. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You risked your life for us, why?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because you reminded me what being human means. It's not about power or strength, it's about standing up when no one else will." At that moment, the door burst open, a young alien rushed in. His face pale. "They're coming," he shouted. "Vale's guards, they're rounding up anyone who supported you." Soraya gasped. Leora clung to her mother's dress. Daniel grabbed his repaired device. "Then we don't hide," he said. "We show them what courage looks like." He stepped outside. Facing the glowing city once more, dozens of armored soldiers marched down the streets. Their leader shouted, "By order of Lord Vale." Surrender the human. Daniel raised his hands, but his voice was calm. I'm right here, he said. Tell your lord. Truth doesn't surrender. The soldiers stopped. Unsure behind them, more citizens appeared. Some whispered. Some stood beside Daniel in silence. One by one, others joined them. Young, old, fearful but brave. Saraya's heart pounded. For the first time in her life, she saw her people choosing courage over silence. And it all began with one human's heart. As the lights of the colony flickered between red and blue, Daniel stood tall, unarmed, outnumbered, but unbroken. He had no army, no weapon, only his voice. And that voice carried across the night like a promise that even in a galaxy ruled by fear, one human heart could still change everything. The streets of the glowing colony were no longer silent. The air shook with shouts, voices, and the heavy steps of armored guards. Daniel stood in front of Saraya's home, surrounded by flashing red light. Behind him stood Saraya and little Leora, their faces pale but full of courage. The soldiers aimed their glowing weapons. By order of Lord Vile, the leader shouted, all who stand with the human will be punished. But this time something was different. The crowd that once mocked Saraya no longer hid in the shadows. Dozens of aliens stepped forward, some with trembling hands, some with fierce eyes. We stand with them, one voice said. Then another and another, until the whole square echoed with defiance. Daniel turned slowly, his heart pounding. He saw them, creatures of light, crystal, and color, all standing together, not afraid, not silent, and for the first time, he saw what courage could do. Lord Vale appeared in the distance. Descending from the upper spire, his armor glowed like molten gold. His anger burned through the air. So this is the human's power, he said coldly. Turning my people into traitors, Daniel stepped forward. I didn't turn them into anything, he said. They were always brave, they just needed to remember it. Vile's eyes narrowed. You think words will save you? He raised his hand and a beam of golden light shot toward Daniel. But this time the crowd moved. Dozens of hands lifted, blue light rose from the people. The energy met Vale's blast in the air and broke it apart. The shockwave rattled the city. Crystals cracked, towers shook, but no one backed down. Leora's small voice rose above the noise. Stop fighting, she cried. Her body glowed again, the same blue light as before. It spread outward like waves of calm through the chaos. The weapons lowered, the air shimmered with soft color. Even Vale staggered, staring in disbelief. What is this power? He whispered. Saraya stepped forward. Her voice steady. It's not power, she said. It's love, the thing you tried to erase from our hearts. Vale's golden armor dimmed. The energy around him flickered weakly. For the first time, fear showed in his eyes. He looked at the human, then at the mother and daughter. You've poisoned them with weakness, he growled. No, Daniel said. We reminded them of strength. Vael's power faltered, and the crowd began to move closer. Not with violence, but with unity. Every step they took forward made his light fade more until finally, the great lord of the colony vanished into the shadows, defeated not by force but by the courage he could never understand. Silence filled the city once more, but this time it was peaceful. The people looked at each other, not with judgment, but with pride. Saraya turned to Daniel, her voice soft. You changed everything, she whispered. Daniel shook his head. No, he said gently, looking at Leora. She did. The little girl smiled shyly. Her small hand reached up and took his. Does that mean you'll stay with us? She asked. Daniel's voice softened. If you'll have me. Saraya smiled, tears glimmering in her silver eyes. You already are part of us, she said. For the first time. We are not alone. The colony lights brightened again. Children's laughter echoed through the streets. The crystals glowed soft blue, singing faint music, and high above, the stars shone brighter than ever. Daniel looked up at them. The same stars he once saw through the window of his empty station. But tonight they didn't look lonely. They looked like witnesses to something new. A future born from courage, a family born from love, and a human heart that refused to stay silent